great-grandfather was Christopher Percy Oswald, and he was part of the setting up of the commission back in 1919. And the family sort of law is that Fabian Ware was the inspiration for the commission, and my great-grandfather was the perspiration. And I recently took a trip to Ypres, and as part of that, looked into a bit more about the family and discovered a lot more about my great-grandfather. So before I went to Ypres, I started looking online and Googling his name and came across the digital archives and started looking at all the links on there and downloaded some documents, some committee meeting papers, and I saw there were 2 watercolors that weren't scanned but that were available in the archive. So I got in touch with the archive to see if I could get a copy of those watercolors.
So these are the watercolors. So these, if you can tell us a bit more about these, so who actually made these watercolors? And
so yeah, these are my great-grandmother Ida Oswald painted these near Ypres. I actually don't know the year.
So I think these are from 1919. So
right.
You know, just after, I think this is when your great-grandfather joins the commission in 1919, and he was the kind of financial controller responsible for setting up the War Graves Commission as it was in France.
And I think this is Hill 60?
Yeah, so this is the road leading up to Hill 60. So
which, funny enough, I went to see when I was out there.
And you can see there's a kind of a makeshift cemetery by the side of the road.
Yeah, and again, just the decimation, just the whole, how barren the landscape is. Which you obviously don't see now when you go there, but is.
So that's the Hill 60 road.
Yeah.
And then this one is taken. This is a view within Ypres itself. And so what's interesting is that on the back it's got a description of what it is. It says Rue de Elverdinge, near the prison in Ypres, 1919, by Mrs. C.P. Oswald.
Yeah.
And what's actually interesting now is that this is the same street where we have an office in Ypres today. So if you go to Ypres, the Commission's offices are on this road, but I don't think they were at the time, and they weren't there for many years afterwards. So this is almost a complete random, connection is still there. Well, I'm going to put the watercolors to one side for the moment. I wanted to show you something else we've got in the archive, and that is we have Lieutenant Colonel Christopher Percy Oswald's staff file, as it were. So this basically records the administrative side of his career. So all the things he did every time he had to kind of travel overseas, or so some of it's quite dry, but you also do get a sense of the type of person he was. If we go right back to the start, we have letters basically about his appointment, and actually having a look through it, it seemed like the commission was very lucky, because at one point he was almost headhunted to go somewhere else.
Oh, really?
General Ware explained his position to me and his extreme reluctance to stand in the way of your material advancement, but at the same time he was bound to consider the interests of the commission, and in the circumstances he felt unable to release you. Right. But so you kind of think, was he a bit annoyed about that or not? But it goes on to say it's a really kind of resounding tribute to Oswald. He says, Fabian Ware says, "All these changes are doing us no good. I cannot help thinking that we ought to find some way of retaining the services of a man like this for a considerable period and make him contented." So obviously he was such a key part of the commission. They didn't want him to go because they knew. Yeah. And explicitly say we need to find a way to keep him. Yeah. So that's kind of a ringing endorsement from Fabian Ware himself.
It's fabulous to see it. It really kind of brings it to life to see the original documents. It's an amazing thing. I think it's incredibly powerful to keep a record and to see these records and not to lose sight of what happened 100 years ago. And I think the best way to stop it happening again is to keep looking and remembering what happened last time the world got to that point. And so I think these archives are incredibly important. And when you've got a personal connection, it just makes it very powerful.